What division does every club in the 92 deserve to be in based on their home support? That's what we're going to be exploring in today's video. I've gone ahead and taken every club in the 92 and ranked them by their home attendance from last season. Using those figures, I'll then be placing every club into a tier list based on what division that club theoretically deserves to be in based on their support. 500 likes on today's video would be massively appreciated. But without any further ado, let's jump in. We'll go through all the clubs in alphabetical order, starting out with Accrington Stanley, and based on their home attendances, they do belong in League 2. Have been punched above their weight in recent years, but with crowds of just over 2,700 on average, they're actually the second smallest club in the 92, based on their home attendances. Bournemouth would actually be the 7th biggest club in League 1 if every club was ranked by their home attendances. Obviously, they're packing out that ground week in, week out, but really good season they've just come off the back of in the Premier League. Iraola doing the business for them there, and with that ownership model, you've got to respect it. With gates of just over 7,800 fans on average, AFC Wimbledon would belong in League 1 based on these metrics. No surprises whatsoever, of course, Arsenal and Aston Villa both rank in the Premier League in terms of success on the pitch recently and in terms of their home attendances as well. Barnsley bring in crowds of just over 12,700 on average. At Barrow, you've got home attendances of just over 3,800. They belong in League 2 based on that metric. Birmingham City have just been relegated to League 1, but based on their home attendances, they are a championship club, bringing in over 21,000 on average. Now, Blackburn Rovers are a championship club. They've got average home attendances of around 15,500, which would actually have them as the biggest club in League 1, but not quite on the level of some clubs that were going to stick in the championship. And based on those home attendances, Rovers would be at the top of the food chain, but in League 1. With Blackpool, they've got average home gates of 10,600. That would place them in League 1, which is where they are right now in the 92. Bolton came agonisingly close to promotion to the championship, and based on the home attendances they bring in, over 23,000 on average, they do belong in the championship. Obviously lost to Oxford in that League 1 playoff final. They'll be among the favourites to win League 1 next season, I'm sure, but just haven't been able to get over the line so far. Bradford City are definitely one of the biggest sleeping giants in the 92, still playing in League 2, but based on their home attendances of over 17,500 on average, they do belong in the championship. Whether or not they'll get there in these next few years is anyone's guess. Brentford, one of the best run clubs in the country, obviously kicking it with those sides in the Premier League right now, but based on their home attendances, they do belong in the championship. Obviously selling out that ground week in, week out, holds just over 17,000, and that would place them in this ranking as a championship club. With Brighton at the Amex, they're now getting crowds of over 31,000, which does place them as a Premier League club, so you can't argue with the Seagulls being up there and rubbing shoulders with the big boys. Another one of the best run clubs in the country. I don't think there's any arguments over that. Bristol City are now the joint longest serving championship club, and based on their home attendances of over 22,000 on average, they do belong as a championship club. We'll squeeze them in there. I actually think in terms of home attendances, Bristol City are slightly above Blues, aren't they? So we'll stick them in there, but yeah, can't have any complaints with the Robins being in the championship. Bristol Rovers are bringing in crowds of over 8,100 on average. That would have them in here as a League 1 club. Last season, Burnley got crowds of just over 21,000 in the Premier League at Turf Moor. That would have them down as a championship club based on the size of that fan base. Obviously, they'll be among the favourites to win the championship next season, I'm sure. With crowds of 3,400 on average, Burton would be a League 2 club. They'd be sandwiched in between Barrow and Accrington. Cambridge, with crowds of just over 6,600 on average, would be the second biggest club in League 2 based on those figures. You then got Cardiff, who average slightly more fans than Birmingham and Burnley do, and would slot in there in the championship rankings. Carlisle United averaged exactly 8,000 fans last season. That would place them here in League 1, just above AFC Wimbledon in the rankings. Charlton Athletic average crowds of 13,400, which would have them as the second biggest club in League 1, just below Blackburn Rovers based on the home fans. No surprises, obviously Chelsea are in the Premier League, they slot in there. Cheltenham have just been relegated back to League Two, and based on their average home attendances, that is where they belong as a club. You then got Colchester United with average crowds of just over 4,100, also slotting into League Two based on those figures. Coventry with gates of over 25k on average are slotted into the Championship there. That's where they're playing their football in real life right now. Crawley with crowds of just over 4,800 on average would be going into League Two. Just above them it's Crewe with gates of 5,200 on average, but also in League Two. Crystal Palace have established themselves as a solid Premier League club for quite a few years, but based on the capacity of Selhurst Park and the tickets they're selling, they actually belong in the Championship, slightly less than Coventry actually in terms of tickets sold on a weekly basis, obviously due to the size of Selhurst Park. It doesn't show the Derby badge very well on this tier maker, but based on their home crowds, which they've been pulling in League One, they actually belong in the Premier League. They would be the smallest of the Premier League clubs, but with gates of over 27,000 on average, Derby do belong in the Premier League. Doncaster bring in around 7,300 fans on average. They'd be at the bottom end of League One in terms of size of club. With gates of over 39k, Everton can quite comfortably be chucked into the Premier League pile. Exeter with crowds of 6,800 on average would go into the top of League Two based on this ranking. Gillingham are just below Exeter and Cambridge with crowds of around 6,400 based on last season. Southampton have just been promoted back to the Premier League, and based on the home crowds they're bringing in, they do deserve to be a Premier League club, just over 29,000 on average at St Mary's this season. Fleetwood are just above Burton with crowds of over 3,400 on average. They would be in League Two. You then got Forest Green Rovers, who are actually the smallest club in the 92 from last season with crowds of just over 2,400. They'd be at the bottom of League Two. Fulham have done well to establish themselves as a Premier League club once again, but based on the home gates at Craven Cottage, they would be a top Championship club. They'd slot in just below Crystal Palace here. Grimsby with crowds of 6,300 on average would be just above Crewe in League Two, which is being populated quite well right now. Harrogate with crowds of just over 2,700 would be the third smallest club in League Two. They belong there on this tier list. Huddersfield have just been relegated to League One, but based on the size of fan base, they should still be a Championship club. They'd slot in here with crowds of just over 19,000 on average. Hull City's crowds have taken a massive bump up in recent years. They do belong in the Championship, averaging slightly more home fans than Cardiff on average at just over 21k, which is really impressive for the Tigers. Ipswich are finally back in the big time in the Premier League, and based on the size of fan base, they do deserve to be there. We'll slot Ipswich in here. Slightly bigger home crowds than Derby. They'd be the 19th biggest club in England based on home attendances, obviously packing out Portman Road last season on a weekly basis. No surprises whatsoever. Of course, Leeds United do belong in the Premier League based on size of fan base. They'd slot in there. It was playoff final heartache for them losing against Southampton. I'm sure their time in the Premier League will come around once again. For the time being, they'll have to settle for the Championship, but based on the crowds they're getting at Ellen Road, they do deserve to be in the Prem. Leicester recently promoted back up to the big time, and they do deserve to be there. They sell out that stadium on a weekly basis, which holds just over 31,000. Leyton Orient are bringing in crowds of over 8,100. That would place them somewhere about there in the League One rankings based on the other clubs here. Lincoln, with average home attendances of over 8,400, will also be in League One, squeezed between Blackpool and Bristol Rovers in this ranking. Obviously, Liverpool, one of the biggest clubs in the world, no doubts whatsoever. They're in the Premier League based on their home attendances. Sunderland, another club that deserves to be in the Premier League. They've got a higher average home attendance this season than Chelsea have had. Surely it's only a matter of time before they're kicking it back in the Premier League, but they're getting ridiculous fans for Championship football. Over 41,000 on average for the Championship is unheard of. Luton Town have just had their season in the Premier League. They're back down to the Championship now, but based on home attendances, they would actually be in League One. Sure, that'll change when they move to that new stadium and have the capacity to hold more fans in that ground, but for the time being, they are in League One for this ranking. Obviously, the two Manchester clubs do belong in the Premier League. Man City, slightly lower attendances than Liverpool, and Man United, the biggest in the country. Mansfield, with crowds of around about 7,400, would be just above Doncaster and would be a League One club based on those figures. Middlesbrough have made a name for themselves as a Championship club in recent recent years, and based on their current crowds of just under 27k on average, they'd actually be the biggest club in the Championship if everyone was in the correct division based on their home fans, just missing out on the Premier League slightly with ever so slightly less crowds than Derby County. MK Dons with home crowds of 6,900 would be in and around the bottom of League One. Morecambe with crowds of just over 4,000 would be placed in and about the middle of League Two, around there. Newcastle goes without saying, they're a Premier League club, crowds of just over 52k on average at St James's Park. Sure, that will improve as well if they do get that stadium expansion there. Newport belong in League Two, just above Colchester, with crowds of around about 4,300. Northampton drawing crowds of just over 6,800 on average, and that would put them at the bottom of League One based on home fans. Norwich with crowds of just over 26k would be one of the biggest clubs in the Championship, which is probably where you'd say they've been over these last few years, a bit of a yo-yo club between the Prem and Championship. Nottingham Forest just about holding on to their Premier League status right now, and that is where they deserve to be as a club, in fairness to them. Packing out the City Ground with attendances of just under 30k. Notts County with gates of over 10,900 do deserve to be in League One. They're just above Blackpool for home fans. Oxford are a League One club based on size of support, average gates of around 9,100. Obviously recently promoted to the Championship. I'm fascinated to see how they're going to get on next season. Peterborough ever so slightly ahead of Oxford in terms of home attendances, around that 9.1k figure. They tend to be in and around the top clubs in League One as well, so do fit in to that sort of bracket as well based on the number of fans they get. Plymouth Argyle are a Championship club based on their home attendances of over 16,500. If Home Park was to be expanded as well, I'm sure they'd sell a lot more tickets. It's great to have Portsmouth back in the Championship, and with crowds of 18,900 on average, they do deserve to be a Championship club. With crowds of 6,600, Port Vale slot in third in the League Two rankings. As you all know, I am a Preston North End fan. I think it's fair to say that North End are the most Championship club of all time. And unsurprisingly, based on the number of home fans we have, we do deserve to be a Championship club as well. Average gates of around 16,700 based off last season. QPR also join us in the Championship. Very similar number of home fans to North End. I believe it's now Bristol City, Preston and QPR who are all now the longest serving clubs in the Championship, and based on the number of home fans they get, they all deserve to be at that level. Based on last season's home attendances, Reading do actually deserve to be a League One club. Now, a few years ago, Reading's attendances were quite significantly higher and would have comfortably been ranked as a Championship club, but after a few chaotic years, their attendances have dipped to around about 13,000, which would have them down as a League One club for the time being. Rotherham are just above Blackpool in terms of number of home fans. They would slot into League One, obviously just relegated to League One from the Championship. Have a feeling Steve Evans' side will do very well next season though. Already got plenty of transfer business done, haven't they? No real shocks here. Salford do belong in League Two. They're just above Harrogate in terms of number of home fans. It was pretty miserable watching Sheffield United in the Premier League last season, but based on number of home fans, they do deserve to be in the top flight. They're actually just above Southampton if we can get them in there, based on the number of match-going fans that they've got at Bramall Lane on a weekly basis. Sheffield Wednesday a little bit lower down the pecking order than their local rivals. They'd actually be the second biggest club in the Championship based on number of home fans, just over 26k on average getting at Hillsborough at the moment. I'm sure next season, with both clubs being in the Championship, there won't be that much to separate them in terms of average attendances. Shrewsbury, with crowds of around 6,300 on average, would be slotted in around about there, if we can get them in there, in the League Two rankings. Stevenage been going well in League One, but based on size of crowds, they would actually be in League Two, slotted in between Crewe and Crawley. Stockport have just won League Two, had a fantastic season, and based on size of fan base, they do deserve to be a League One club, slightly above Oxford United, with around about 9,300 match-going fans. Stoke City get 22.7k on average and do deserve to be in the Championship, just above Bristol City. Been a few quite a few actually inconsistent years for the Potters in the Championship, but still the crowds have remained consistent in that time. Sutton, with crowds of 3,200, are a League 2 club based on fan base size. You can't really see the badge that well on this tier list, but this is Swansea, and they do deserve to be in the Championship, sandwiched in between QPR and Plymouth based on home gates they're getting. Always have fond memories of playing Swindon because we beat them in the League One playoff final. Speaking of League One, they do deserve to be in there based on the number of home fans they're getting. They're slotted just below Oxford. With average crowds at the Den of around 16,500, Millwall do deserve to be a Championship club. They're slotted just above Plymouth there. Tottenham, with their new swanky home stadium, are actually getting bigger home crowds than Arsenal now because of that. With crowds of 6,300, Tranmere would be just below Grimsby in the League 2 rankings. Walsall, another club in League 2, they'd be slightly behind Tranmere in terms of number of home fans. Watford are getting crowds of 18,800 on average, and based on that logic, do deserve to be in the Championship. They're sandwiched there between Portsmouth and Bradford. West Brom are theoretically one of the bigger clubs in the Championship, with crowds of around 24.1k at the Hawthorns on average. They'd be sandwiched in between Fulham and Bolton in terms of number of home fans. Now playing games at the London Stadium, West Ham actually have the second biggest home crowds in all of England, only second to Manchester United. So they can be slotted in there above Spurs in that tier list. Last season, Wigan were pulling in home crowds of around about 10,400. That would place them in League One, sandwiched in between Blackpool and Peterborough based on home fans. Wolves are getting crowds of around about 31k on average. That would place them as a Premier League club where they've comfortably established themselves in real life in recent years. Wrexham, newly promoted to League One, and based on their home crowds, they do deserve to be cutting it at that level. They're slightly below Luton Town in terms of home crowds there. Last season at the Racecourse, pulling in crowds of around about 11,200. And then finally we've got Wycombe Wanderers, who do slot in League 2 in between Crewe and Stevenage. Not that long ago that Wycombe were obviously cutting it in the Championship, but with crowds last season of just under 5,000 on average, that's where they'd be placed in this overall tier list. And there you have it, guys. Based on the home attendances from last season, this is where every club in the 92 theoretically deserves to be in based on the number of home supporters they have. A few of the badges here don't show up great on the tier list, but here I can assure you it is Derby, as you can sort of see when we rise that badge over some of the other things, and here is Swansea City as well, just for reference. But guys, there you have it. That will now wrap it up for today's video. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like. This video was just for a little bit of fun. Other than that though, guys, thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you all in the next one.